Hi everyone, this is Balazs from RacingBrick. This is the second part of my 42172 McLaren P1 review. In the first one you could see the unboxing and all the interesting aspects of the build, including the test of the new gearbox. If you missed that video, you can find the link below. Today we go into the features, compare the set to its predecessors, check the accuracy of the build and talk about the price and overall value. But before we get to the features, I want to revisit some topics from the first video. One thing I only mentioned in the preview, the price and availability, so let's clarify that first. The set costs €450 or dollars and it will be available on lego.com and in LEGO stores from the 1st of August. If you are quick enough, you can get an additional gift with purchase. I will go into the details at the end of the video about that. For all local prices, please use the link at the top right corner or in the description. The other topic is the gear shifter or changeover cylinder element. For the first sight, I thought this new version is a simple recolor of the Yamaha motorcycle's similar party medium-azure, but actually the mold was updated as well. The letters are no longer on it, and there's another big difference. On the old version, one of the axle holes was rotated 45 degrees, on the orange one the axle holes are parallel. It would be interesting to know why the design has been updated in this way and whether we will still find the medium-azure version in future sets, we will see. Now let's take a look at the features. We have functional butterfly doors that open well. Behind them is a clever spring-loaded mechanism that you could see during construction. They are fairly easy to open and close, they stay up, all good at first glance. When they are open, they wobble a bit, but that's down to the weight, and to be honest, the previous cars weren't much better in that respect. We have no hand-of-God steering, the steering wheel is connected to the wheels, but it's actually much easier to turn the wheels themselves than to turn the steering wheel. This also shows that the set is intended for display and not for playing. All four wheels have independent suspension, the front suspension travel is slightly longer than the rear. I don't see any issues with the new wishbones at this point, but the wheels don't move much overall. Even if I remove the wheel, I think the parts still hold up well. The rear wing can be adjusted with this knob at the rear. It has a nice amount of travel with a well-constructed movement. You can see how the angle changes as it goes up and down. There are a few bits sticking out of the mount as the wing extends. Let's see if the modders can do anything about that. If you don't like the knob, you can easily remove it and reattach if needed. The hood opens, and we have this rod here to support it. I'm sure the real one has a more sophisticated solution, but it works here. Here's the frunk for the bag. It can move around if I put it in like this, maybe it's better in this position. Another thing I mentioned during building, the removable engine cover. Well, it's sort of removable, but you have to take the rear wing off first. It is only held in place by two pins, so it's not a big deal. There are two of those orange bushes with pins you need to remove then, and you can take a look inside. Reinstalling it is pretty easy too, I just wish those pieces wouldn't stick out that much with their different shade. And last but not least, the function that will hardly be used, the gearbox. The pedal shifters work, but access is a bit awkward. As I've mentioned a few times, I really don't see anyone pushing a car this big around just to see the pistons move a little faster or slower. I showed you the details in the first part, but let's recap quickly. This is the hybrid mode where the V8 is running and also these drums that represent the electric motor. This is neutral where none of the engines are on, and this is E mode where only the electric motor is running. Unlike previous cars, there is no reverse gear here. The gearbox itself has 7 gears and there's a neutral position there as well, so you can have a case where the V8 isn't running even in hybrid mode. I talked about the clutch between the universal joints previously. Let's see what happens if I lock up the drivetrain. Well, the clutch is engaged, the joints hold, apparently it works as intended. So the functions work fine, but I'm still missing some information in the manual about how to operate them, and especially some background information about the transmission. And now it's time to put the set next to the previous 1/8 scale Technic supercars. Many people thought the car was the same color as the Porsche, but as you can see their shade of orange is very different. They look pretty cool together, and if we add the rest of the lineup, you will need a fairly big table or shelf for display. Funnily enough, I've read a lot of complaints about using the same pieces for the mirrors in the previous sets, and now the opposite has happened. People are complaining that LEGO is breaking the tradition with the new elements. Someone has asked to test the suspension of the older models after all these years. The front of the Porsche doesn't really move anymore, the back is quite okay. The Bugatti is perhaps the worst, it barely moves when we push it down. The Lamborghini is surprisingly good, both front and rear, and so is the Ferrari, although the front suspension travel seems to be fairly short there. Now it's time to check out the looks. I bought this small diecast model from Rastar, it is properly licensed. Because of the different perspective and distortion, this model won't be perfect either, but I think it will be good enough for us. The front end received the most complaints, the black area is too large, the lights are too big, the nose looks like a Corvette and so on. Well, I wouldn't really mind the black section below, I think the lights and the surrounding area is more problematic. The white pieces in themselves might not be that disproportionate, but we have way too many black around them, especially in this corner. Those parts should be orange too, that would help a lot. The color choice of these pieces is also weird, I'm not sure why these parts are grey here. About the side profile, I like how the paneling and the lines on the door have been recreated, there are a lot of matching elements. Surprisingly, the wheels look too big this time, usually the opposite is the case. The gap here is quite annoying, but I suppose it was necessary for the door to open properly. The A-pillar, the door frame and the roof are pretty good, I think, not exactly the same, but close enough. Most people like the rear, and while the lines flow really nicely here, there are also a few risky sections, like the not quite complete replica of the black McLaren logo here and the many visible elements below the taillights. All in all, some details are off, especially on the front, but I don't think the overall picture is that bad, as there are also many accurate sections. This is of course a personal preference and you are free to disagree with me, but remember, if you can have a different opinion, so can I, and it still doesn't mean that any of us are influenced by anyone. A few words about the price. 450 euros or dollars, that's a lot of money. But surprisingly, this is the current price of the Ferrari Daytona SP3 on LEGO.com, so at least there hasn't been a price increase compared to its predecessor. But the good news is that you can get the Ferrari for around 300 euros these days, so I would expect the McLaren to reach that level sooner or later. As I said, I have no intention of comparing the car with custom builds or unlicensed sets from other manufacturers for one simple reason, because I don't have them at the moment. So I'm not going to compare Bruno Jensen's custom build to this set, but I have to mention it for one reason. I prefer his approach to the set's internal feature selection over LEGO's traditional choice. These cars are practically built around their complicated gearbox and it seems to be their biggest selling point. But meanwhile, it's a feature that uses many elements and has almost unnoticeable effect, and it's practically unobservable once the set is built. I brought this up in the Ferrari review 2 years ago, and many of you said that for this price, it must have a complex gearbox to build, regardless of its usefulness. Well, I still don't agree with that. I think adjustable suspension or a working air brake is a much better feature. You will certainly understand it better during the build than a big pile of colorful gears, and it has a more visible effect once the set is built. That's why I'm glad that the upcoming Mercedes-Benz G500 no longer has the Defender's 4-speed gearbox, but still seems to offer enough options to play with and a decent level of complexity. This is still a big sculpture that will sit on the shelf or hang on the wall just like the others, they just happen to be made of Technic parts, the features are barely used. If you really want to add functions, then the more visible they are, the better. That's why my favorite is still the Lamborghini Sian. The linkage that operates the door or the rear wing is easy to understand when building it, it's also easy to operate, that was a good choice. On the Ferrari, they made the functions less comfortable to use, and I'm not a fan of that mostly brick-built rear part that falls off quite easily, and it also had quite a few anomalies with the instructions at the release. So for me, the McLaren is a step up from the Ferrari, but if I had to choose one from this collection, I would still go for the Lamborghini. The body shaping and all the building techniques of the McLaren could push it to second place if the podcast released for it will be as exciting as the one made for the Bugatti, which I really enjoyed during building. Appearance is a subjective matter. Despite the problems with the proportions on the front, I think many people will still like the end result. And many won't like it, but fortunately there are plenty of alternatives for them. Remember, you don't have to buy every LEGO set that comes out, maybe you are just not the target audience. In terms of functionality, I didn't find any problems, and the construction seems to be more stable than the Ferrari. Should you buy it? I definitely wouldn't buy the set at the recommended retail price on day one, although there is an interesting gift with purchase that you can get with it if you are quick enough, at least if you find the rotating P1 logo valuable enough to help you decide. The gift might have a resale value for collectors, so you can use it as a discount on the set if you want to sell the gift later. But if you want to buy the set and can wait a few months, I would definitely recommend checking prices at other retailers a bit later, or even waiting until Black Friday. So, that was my two-part detailed review of the McLaren P1. Please share your thoughts on the set, why you like it, why you don't like it, but as always I ask you to remain respectful and share your opinion of the set, but not about each other. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe with notifications, as there will be lots of exciting LEGO reviews coming soon. See you next time, bye bye.